Another reaction. This is to reading 5. So one true thing and 2 writing tips. The true thing. There's a line where I write, he thought about how cold their bodies would become. This is Cato's thinking after seeing all the dead bodies in the pod after they've all just been shot. And the true thing was that my dad died years ago, and his body was in the hospital. I went to go say goodbye to him. While I was saying goodbye, I touched him. His body was cold. And think about it, it's the first time in my life where my father's body was cold. And I've never shaken that. Like, not in a bad way. I just can't, it's almost like I can still feel the coldness on my fingertip to this day because that was such a strange sensation. So the way bodies can get cold after they expire is something that comes up throughout the course of the story. Again, just accessing real life, just sprinkling it throughout the story. Grammar thing. One is like a really small, funny thing. I don't know how I missed this during the course of most of my adult life. My professor was saying, if I want to write a question or in dialogue, like "Am I next?" which Cato says, and you want to have some oomph behind it, you can just use an exclamation point. I don't have to use like the question mark and exclamation point because they're going to know it's a question. Because "Am I next?" is not a sentence. That can be a declarative sentence. It has to be interrogative. So yeah, there's still an exclamation point. That's a real small thing, but I never knew that until last year or maybe the year before. So just want to share that. Another thing, and this is something I saw a lot of in grad school, how to end a first chapter. And the simplest piece of advice I got was with a question. The question being, what happens next? If you answer all the questions presented in the first chapter, I mean, you should definitely answer some to create some momentum and keep your reader engaged and also build your trust between you and the reader, so the reader knows that they're in the hands of a really good storyteller. But the reason you don't answer all the questions so that the reader has a reason to go on to the next chapter, or ultimately what your first chapter might feel like is a short story, which is something I noticed. Like sometimes a classmate would submit the first chapter to a story, but they answered all the questions, and so the first chapter, I just had no motivation to go on to the second chapter because everything you've told me in this first chapter and introduced me to has been resolved by the end of the first chapter. So why am I going on to the next chapter? So if you're going to end the chapter, really every chapter in the story, there should be some kind of question that is propelling the reader further to the next chapter. There's your storytelling tale. Deuces.